Today's case will be about a rather smart serial killer, because he continued committing his crimes for 15 years without leaving behind him no evidence, or anything that the police could find through him. The events of our case will begin in the year 2001, specifically in Los Angeles, America, which is considered the home of famous Hollywood. We will get to know each other about Ashley Allaire, who was 22 years old and was a resident there. Ashley is a student majoring in design and fashion, and all her friends say that she is a strict person and always focused on her goals and does not let anyone disturb her. She intended to build a very strong career path in her specialty. Accordingly, she was studying at the Los Angeles Institute of Design, in addition to additional lessons that she took from the University of California. She was also working half-time to make up for her expenses, and she was working as a dancer, meaning her days were always full and she never had free time. The house she lived in was a house she shared with one of her friends, and the location of the house was very close to the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Because of the place where she lived and because of her connections, she was able to reach out to Hollywood celebrities personally, and she even dated Vin Diesel for a short period, and after that she also linked up with Jeremy Sisto and he took her with him to the filming of one of his films. In December 2000, she met a 23-year-old actor named Ashton Kutcher. This was the beginning of Ashton's fame, and the TV series he filmed became a trend, and people began to know and love him more and more. They got to know each other through mutual friends, meaning she knew someone he knew, and this person introduced them to each other, and their affairs went on. Let's go back to February 21, 2001, because on that day Ashton had a Grammy Awards party, and after the awards were presented he was invited to after party, and on the same day he talked to Ashley and promised her that he would come out with her after party. They agreed on the time they would go out and everything was supposed to be fine. I don't know if the girl was talking to 10 people at the same time, but we don't have to worry about that matter. When it was time for us to go on a date, Ashton called his friend to tell her that he was going to be a little late for the agreed-upon date. She told him, "It's okay, I'm going to be a little late, too, because now I'm getting ready." At 10:15 minutes, Ashton called his friend again, but she answered him, and since he was going to her in both cases, he did not care much about the matter and went to her house. He arrived at the house and saw her car parked in front of the house and the house lights were on, meaning she was supposed to be at home. He knocked on the door more than once and she did not open the door for him. When she did not open the door for him, he tried to take a look from the window. He saw that the house was very chaotic and he asked that it was red on the floor, but that too. The thing did not arouse his curiosity because she had told him before that she was changing the arrangement of her house and working on it, so the chaos was justified for him. After he rang on the door and the phone more than once without an answer, he left because he was thinking that she was upset with him, for example, because he was late, or she fell asleep, or anything normal happened. He did not think that the situation might be bad, so he went away and treated it as normal. The next morning, Ashton's friend comes home and is surprised by a very scary sight. Her friend was dead, her blood was filling the room, and her head was almost severed from the stab wounds. It later became clear that she had been stabbed 47 times. When the police began investigating her location, they asked her neighbors if they heard anything strange or saw any strange movement. The neighbor's answer was that no, we never saw anyone, but we heard a screaming sound around 8:30 p.m., but we thought it was the screams of a party or something just normal. The first person they started investigating was her friend, Ashton, the Hollywood star. He was the first person they came to investigate because his handprints were on the door of the room. When they asked him why she was there, he had the details I mentioned a little while ago, and he justified the presence of his fingerprint. After a few more questions, the police confirmed that he had nothing to do with the matter. They excluded him from among the suspects. The second person they brought for investigation was the owner of the house where Ashley lived, and after they asked him a few questions, it became clear that he had nothing to do with the matter and they excluded him as well. So the police started thinking about the matter and looking at theories, and something that caught their attention was that there were no signs of a break in the door, nor any signs of a break-in at all. This means that most likely Ashley is the one who opened the door for her killer, and that she opens the door for someone late at night, meaning that she knows about this. Who could the person be, I wonder? One of the people that Ashley's friends mentioned to the police was Michael the Frenchman. This person Ashley always complained about and said that he was annoying and he harassed her a lot and tried to get close to her and her things, but even this person had nothing to do with the case. After months of investigation, the police finally found a name or a suspected person, and that name was Michael Gargiulo. At the same time when the Los Angeles Police Department began investigating Michael, they received a call from the Illinois State Police saying that they were investigating the cold case from 1993, and the person suspected in this case is a resident of Los Angeles and his name is Michael Gargiulo. The case that came from Illinois State was also the case of the murder of a girl named Trisha Pikachu in 1993, who was 18 years old. August 13, 1993. It was a Friday. On Friday night, Trisha was having a dinner party with her friends on the occasion of the fact that they had finished high school, and everyone among them was going to go to a different university and start a new life. At 1 p.m. on this day, Trisha arrived with her friends, each one at his house, and she was supposed to return to her house as well, and it is true that she arrived at her house, but Aisha did not arrive. The first person who saw her urge was her father. He was leaving the house to walk the dog, and the first thing he saw when he came out was his daughter's body. Unfortunately, her condition was bad. Her hand was broken and stabbed about 50 times. She was also holding her house key in her hand, which means that the killer most likely attacked her while she was at the door of her house, and she was holding the key and was about to open the door and enter, but she was not caught. According to what her family said, she was a very nice and kind girl and had no enemies at all. They were not suspicious of anyone, nor did they have any names to present to the police as suspect names. The police asked that they investigate anyone who communicated with her before her death, and Michael Gargiulo was one of them. At the time, the police investigated him and he told them that 2 days before she died, he came and arrived at her house, in a very normal way, and even the family knew about him, and he used to enter the house and visit them, but there was something against it. When the police from the two states began to compare the details and events of the story and saw that it was very, very similar, they said it was impossible for this thing to be a coincidence, so Michael became wanted in the two states and everyone was looking for him. The search for him took many months, but in the end the police caught him. The first thing they did when they arrested him was to ask him for a DNA sample, but he refused. He told them, "I have nothing to do with these cases, and without an official permit from the court or the police, I will not give you a sample." In fact, the police did not have the authority to do this, and they did not have concrete evidence against him, so they could not do anything. The police have suspicions that he is involved in cases, but they have no evidence of him, so they released him, but they began to monitor him. After a period of observation, they learned that he had fallen ill and had been admitted to the hospital, and immediately after he came out, they went to the hospital where he was, secretly, of course, and asked to take a sample of his DNA. Finally, after waiting a long time, the result comes out and it turns out that the DNA that was found under Trisha's fingernails is the DNA of Michael Gargiulo. After this happened, the police responsible for the case went to the officials above them to obtain an order from them to charge or arrest Michael Gargiulo, and the pretext was that we had a DNA match. But because of the way they obtained the DNA, the people above the police refused to give them a warrant for his arrest and simply told him that the DNA could have been altered or tampered with or anything else, so we would never be able to do anything. The police responsible for the case were suspicious, even certain, that Michael was involved in the case, and they were trying as much as possible to catch him, but they were unable. After they were refused the necessary powers, they began to research his past more, hoping that they would find something else that would help them with the matter. During their journey searching for him, they learned that he was born in Allionite State in 1976 in a fairly large family. He had 7 brothers. Michael used to tell people that when he was young, his sisters and father used to abuse him a lot, but this information was not confirmed if it was true or not. During his teenage years, he became known as a bully. He was mean to people and became angry with them quickly. One of his friends told the police that Michael was too aggressive when he became angry. He became a human being and could never behave like a human being. He was arrested more than once while he was in school on charges such as theft and car break-ins. He loved the character of the killer Ted Bundy very much, and he read many books about him and forensic medicine, and how they dissect bodies and take evidence from them, and so on. After he read many books and had a lot of information about the subject, he began to brag about the subject and tell his friends that if the police caught me once, they would not be able to find any evidence because I would know how to get rid of everything. They also knew that after he killed Trisha in 1993, he began visiting their house a lot and gave gifts to her brother and her family, and on one occasion he sat with her brother for 4 continuous hours on the basis that he would expose him and read the story from his heart. But during the 4 hours she did not say anything. The information came from Patricia's family personally, and they themselves were surprised by her actions and contacted the investigators and told them about her. Unfortunately, they have not yet been able to sign it, and time has passed and the cases are closed. In the year 1997, the police arrested Michael on charges of stealing a car, and at that time they tried to make an agreement with him and told him that if you tell us details about Patricia's case, we will help you and reduce your sentence, but he always refused everything and would not say a word. In the year 1998, Michael moved to Los Angeles, and his goal was to become a famous actor in Hollywood. He certainly would not be able to reach his goal so quickly, so when he first arrived in Los Angeles, he worked in a bar, but he was fired from his job after a very short period because he hit one of the customers. His aggressive behavior was with all people, even with the girls he was involved with. He used to beat her and threaten them, and kept saying that he had the ability to kill anyone and hide all evidence. During his time working in this place, he met friends, and one day a friend who was working with him in the same job asked him a question: "Have you ever killed anyone in your life?" The strange thing is that Mike answered him and said that a girl named Trisha was killed in 1993, but because Mike was known to be a liar, aggressive and a bully, no one believed him and they said that it was another one of his and his friends' lies, so they did not expect what he said to be true. In the year 2000, he met Ashley, whom we talked about at the beginning, because she lived only 1 street away from his workplace, and the way he met her was on the street. Ashley's car broke down, and Mike saw her and offered to help her, and when he helped her, he tried to date her and spent his whole day. At the door of her house, he watches her and waits for her to come out. Despite all this evidence and all these years that have passed, until now the police have never been able to find Mike. He walked back in time to the year 2005, and in that year there was a woman named Maria Bruno. She was 32 years old and had 4 children. There was a dispute between her and her husband, so she divorced and went to live in a new house of her own in Los Angeles. She used to tell people that she chose this house in which she lived specifically because it was very safe and suitable for her and her 4 children, the eldest of whom was 5 years old. Only 10 days after she moved into this house, which was supposed to be a safe house, her husband called 911 and told them that he saw his wife killed inside her house. A call. When the police arrived at the house and began investigating, they discovered that she had been stabbed 17 times, and that the killer had broken into the house through the kitchen window, taken a knife from the kitchen itself, and carried out his crime. Most likely, the criminal is left-handed, meaning he uses his left hand in daily life. Of course, the first person they complained to the police was her husband first, because he was the one who called and reported her again, that there were disagreements between them and he divorced her, etc. But when they asked him why he was at home, he told them that he was talking to her until they got back together, and things between them would return to normal, and even the night before that, they had gone out to have dinner together in a restaurant, and they were coming back to agree and arrange their lives together. The police saw a drop of Maria's blood in his car, and when they asked him why her blood was in his car, he told them that when they were leaving the restaurant where they were having dinner, she injured her hand, and even that some of the people who worked in the restaurant came and helped her, and they gave her a band-aid. Ask them if they don't believe it. Indeed, the police asked the restaurant workers and confirmed that everything he said was true and that he had nothing to do with his wife's murder. After they excluded him from the case, there is still no suspect left behind them, and the case is about to become a boy. But her neighbors intervened at the right time and told the police that a person living opposite her was behaving very strangely towards her, and that the behavior even increased shortly before her death. When they asked them about this person's name, unfortunately, they did not know, but when they asked about his features, they were able to describe him to them. When they drew the features that the neighbors told me, Mike Gargiulo's features appeared. But this sketch is not considered evidence at all, and there is no tangible evidence against anyone, so the case remained suspended without any procedures. Finally, 3 years after the incident, meaning in 2008, the final blow came to Mike Gargiulo. In April 2008, a girl named Michelle, who was 26 years old, suddenly woke up from her sleep and saw that there was a stranger standing in her bedroom, and suddenly he attacked her and began stabbing her. Although Michelle was weak compared to Michael, she tried to defend herself and started screaming and trying to hold the knife in her hands to prevent him from stabbing her. Unfortunately, he cut her more than once and she started bleeding, but despite this, Michelle mustered all her energy and hit him with her leg so hard that he fell to the ground. Then he said "I'm sorry" and left the room. The criminal was thinking that the girl would die after a while, but she did not die, and she called her friend, and her friend called an ambulance and they came at the right time. A call. When Michelle was defending herself and preventing the criminal from stabbing her, she was able to let him injure himself with his knife, and his blood fell in the room. Then, when the police took the blood and began to analyze it, Michael Gargiulo's blood came out. Finally, Michael was officially arrested on charges of killing Michi, and he was also accused of killing the 3 previous victims he killed over a period of 15 years because of. Of course, the DNA was 100% identical, so they were able to accuse me. Since they finally arrested him, you might think that the situation will finally be resolved and he will take his punishment. But unfortunately, the issue was very complicated because his first victim was in Ohlone and the rest were in Luangus. This meant that he had to attend separate trial sessions, each unit in the state of Shakal, because the law in America separates each governor from the other. This caused his trial to be delayed, and Mike also hired lawyers to prove his innocence, and he even tried to escape from prison, but his attempt was a failure. His defense team told the court that he was unreasonable when he committed the crime. Of course, they said this in order to reduce his sentence, because he had done so and it was impossible for him to deny the charge, but he was sitting there trying to reduce his sentence and saying that he was not conscious. But the court confirmed that he was conscious and completely healthy. He promised to collect more than 3,600 pages of evidence against him and began his trial. They even brought the actor Ashton, who was a friend of his second victim, to testify or give his statement in the case. But his defense team was telling the court that there was no evidence against him in the home of the victim, Ashley. All you have is just a random link between Raskin and his involvement in the charge, but in reality there is no concrete evidence against him. There was a lot of give and take in the matter, and his trial was very difficult and took a lot of time, and despite all this talk, the court was adamant that he was the criminal in all 4 crimes, and they even said that there were most likely victims other than those we discovered, and they could bring the number to 10. But finally, after waiting for many years, approximately 28 years, the court sentenced him to death, but with a suspended sentence. Because the state of California has suspended the death penalty since 2006, they have not executed anyone, but they sentenced him to death, and he is currently in prison, and he could be executed at any moment. And here we have reached the end. Like and subscribe.